The realization that an established career can serve as a placeholder for a newcomer is currently reshaping the professional landscape. For veterans with resumes defined by MVP trophies and defensive honors, the selection process for the 2026 World Cup roster proved that past accolades no longer guarantee a position. Following the finalization of the roster, a reported three-word text message from A'ja Wilson's camp signaled a significant fracture in the traditional hierarchy of the sport. USA Basketball did not merely adjust the lineup, they removed their most decorated veteran, signaling a clear end to the era of guaranteed tenure for the old guard. The circumstances surrounding Wilson's exclusion suggest a shift in priority from historical service to current marketability. While Wilson may have expected routine logistical updates, she instead received a notification of her removal. USA Basketball has indicated that while her career achievements are substantial, they do not drive international engagement in markets like Berlin or Tokyo as effectively as the high-volume scoring and range of a rookie from Iowa. The internal culture has transitioned from a traditional respect for seniority toward a focus on the future of the franchise. This change has not been well received by the veteran core, whose standing within the organization is now under public scrutiny. This decision has fundamentally altered the team's operational framework. For decades, an unspoken rule dictated that players would earn their leadership through years of service. However, the arrival of Caitlin Clark and the 15 million new viewers she brought with her disrupted this progression. The choice to remove Wilson entirely from the 2026 World Cup roster, rather than move her to a secondary role, highlights a collapse of the established hierarchy. The new standard for inclusion requires a combination of global visibility and a collaborative approach, rendering legacy names secondary to current impact. The tension leading to this change had been mounting for 2 years. Wilson had been vocal regarding her concerns about the attention focused on younger players, frequently citing the lack of recognition for Black women and the role of race in media coverage. While these comments addressed internal league dynamics, USA Basketball officials were reportedly monitoring the impact of this rhetoric on the team's global brand. The organization documented instances of public friction and social media activity, concluding that a cohesive culture could not be maintained if the primary veteran was perceived as diminishing the team's most significant growth engine. The decision was also driven by quantitative data. Internal research at USA Basketball revealed a substantial disparity between the economic impact of Wilson and Clark. Broadcast rights values reportedly triple when Clark is on the floor, and international networks have prioritized her participation over veteran presence. In the business of global basketball, the organization viewed the prospect of a popular young star remaining on the bench while a veteran leader expressed public dissatisfaction as a financial risk. A primary technical reason for Wilson's removal involves the differences between domestic and international officiating. In the WNBA, Wilson often benefits from officiating that allows for physical post-play and certain leniencies regarding footwork. However, FIBA officials enforce strict standards on traveling and illegal screens. USA Basketball analysts determined that Wilson's style of play risked consistent foul trouble and turnovers under international rules. Conversely, Clark's game predicated on spacing, passing, and basketball IQ is better suited for the disciplined officiating of the World Cup. The contrast in player reactions further solidified the organization's direction. Upon being named starting point guard, Clark reportedly focused on the playbook and her role in supporting the remaining veterans. Wilson's camp, however, emphasized the perceived disrespect toward her legacy. This reinforced the shift within USA Basketball away from entitlement and toward immediate utility. The fallout has prompted a rapid change in behavior across the league. Veterans who were previously critical of the rookie class have begun to adjust their public personas, recognizing that even the face of the league is not immune to removal. Reports of private communications among veterans regarding Clark have surfaced, followed by a noticeable silence from those same players. The prospect of losing international endorsements and Olympic eligibility has forced a strategic pivot toward positive messaging. This was a calculated, multi-month operation. USA Basketball observed how Wilson's physical defensive style led to excessive fouls in international friendlies, and how the offensive tempo slowed when she was the primary focus. Analysts utilized metrics like tempo delta and gravity metrics to compare the two players. They found that Clark's presence on the perimeter forces defenders out to 30 feet, creating space for the rest of the team. The organization chose a modern high-speed offense over the traditional post-heavy style of the previous decade. Critics often argue that experience is the vital factor in international competition, but USA Basketball has prioritized adaptability. The organization sought to eliminate a culture where newcomers were marginalized despite their popularity. By removing the primary source of internal friction, the committee created a roster of younger players who are focused on a unified brand. This transition reflects the evolution of women's basketball into a global entertainment property that requires participants to align with the overarching narrative. As the 2026 World Cup approaches, the team is unrecognizable compared to previous iterations. The era of the unmovable veteran has concluded in favor of a model that prioritizes skill, pace, and marketability. Sponsors and international broadcasters have reacted positively to the change, as evidenced by record jersey sales and increased media interest. Wilson's exit serves as a definitive statement that no individual player is larger than the game's growth. The question remains whether other veterans will adapt to this new reality. The game does not pause for individual legacies, and gold medals do not offset a perceived liability to the sport's future. The current Team USA is younger and more focused on collective success. They have replaced individual ego with a system built on assists and efficiency. The results of this cultural reset will be visible on the podium in 2026. The transition of power was finalized not through a gradual process, but through a decisive realization that the global audience has moved forward. Wilson's collection of individual awards, including scoring titles and MVPs, was ultimately insufficient to secure her place in the program's future. Research into internal scouting reports shows a cold-blooded assessment of her game. While a master of mid-range dominance, Wilson's style was viewed as a spacing nightmare on the smaller FIBA court. Clark's ability to create nuclear gravity at the half-court line provides a tactical advantage that makes the game easier for her teammates. The marketing strategy behind this move represents a multi-billion-dollar pivot. Nike's signature deal with Clark is built on her unique ability to appeal to diverse global markets simultaneously. International broadcast partners reportedly demanded a roster that felt like a spectacle for a new era rather than a lifetime achievement tour. USA Basketball concluded that Wilson's domestic focus on race and respect did not translate into global ratings as effectively as a high-octane offense. When a personal brand begins to feel exclusionary to a casual audience, the financial stakeholders seek an alternative. The removal of Wilson also functioned as a purge of the previous locker room culture. For several years, a system of vet checking and subtle snubs defined the veteran-rookie dynamic. USA Basketball's decision resulted in a mass deletion of critical social media posts as veterans and their agents entered a state of emergency. The sudden shift toward public support for Clark highlights how quickly the old guard moved to protect their own international eligibility. Rumors regarding the reported three-word text message suggest that Wilson's reaction confirmed the committee's concerns regarding her sense of entitlement. The 2026 World Cup is intended to be the formal handoff to icons like Paige Bueckers and Cameron Brink, players who understand the modern requirements of the sport. The internal energy has shifted from territorial disputes to a focus on unity and growth. Data from FIBA officiating clinics further supports the decision. Referees have been instructed to target the specific physical defensive techniques common in the WNBA. The hand checks and pivot foot movements central to Wilson's game are being prioritized for whistles. By excluding her, Team USA avoids the risk of their primary post player being sidelined by foul trouble. This tactical shift allows for a smoother, faster transition game. The gatekeepers of the previous era have been unseated. The narrative that players must earn their stripes through years of locker room politics has been replaced by a requirement for immediate impact and marketability. Wilson remains one of the greatest traditional players in history, but the sport is no longer seeking tradition. It is seeking a revolution. Her abrupt exit demonstrates how quickly the sport has evolved. As the focus turns to the 2026 World Cup, the reset is complete. The friction points have been neutralized, and a new generation has been given the keys to the program. While the dismissal of a legend like Wilson may seem harsh, it reflects a reality where the game is larger than any individual. The future of the sport is fast, market-driven, and moving away from its own shadow. The Clark era has begun, and the standard for participation has permanently changed. The transition within USA Basketball is best understood through the lens of economic and tactical evolution rather than simple roster management. Internal scouting reports have moved beyond traditional box scores to prioritize tempo delta and gravity metrics, analytical tools that measure a player's impact on the overall speed and spacing of the game. When the research department examined the film, they identified a veteran core utilizing a style of play that analysts increasingly viewed as a historical relic. While A'ja Wilson's mid-range game is considered a technical masterpiece, its reliance on post-up sequences often creates a spacing nightmare in the FIBA environment, where the court dimensions and zone defensive rules are less forgiving than in the WNBA. In contrast, the nuclear gravity generated by Caitlin Clark forces defenders to engage her 30 feet from the basket, fundamentally altering the geometry of the court. This shift essentially converts the game into a series of high-percentage opportunities for her teammates, a tactical advantage that the committee determined was essential for a modern international offense. The marketing strategy underpinning this shift represents a multi-billion-dollar pivot for the sport. The Nike connection is frequently cited as the primary engine driving this change, as the organization recognized the need for a face of the franchise with universal marketability. The signature deal for Clark was not merely a recognition of her shooting ability, but a strategic investment in a player capable of driving shoe sales and media engagement across disparate global markets, from suburban American markets to international street markets in Manila. Behind closed doors, international broadcast partners from France to South Korea reportedly signaled their preference for a roster that reflected a new era of the sport rather than a continuation of legacy achievements. USA Basketball faced a choice between maintaining a domestic narrative centered on race and respect, or embracing a high-octane global brand that promised significant increases in television ratings and jersey sales. The organization ultimately prioritized the financial and commercial growth of the sport, a decision that has been described as a harsh but necessary reality of the modern business landscape. This shift has also necessitated a purge of the existing locker room culture, which had become defined by a system of vet checking that many internal observers likened to hazing. For several years, a visible tension had been festering, characterized by subtle snubs and a refusal to acknowledge the impact of the incoming rookie class. The toxic friction reached a point where it was viewed as a liability to the team's gold medal objectives. The removal of the primary veteran presence was intended to lance this cultural wound, creating a vacuum now being filled by a generation of players like Paige Bueckers and Cameron Brink. These athletes have matured within the current media environment and are viewed as more aligned with a cooperative, unified team identity. The era of the unmovable veteran who treats roster spots as lifetime appointments has been replaced by a system where inclusion is predicated on immediate impact and a willingness to facilitate the growth of the global game. The technical disparities between domestic and international play further justified the roster reset. In the WNBA, established stars often benefit from what is colloquially known as the superstar whistle, where officials may overlook physical post-play, illegal screens, or minor footwork violations. However, FIBA officiating is notoriously rigid regarding these infractions. USA Basketball officials documented numerous instances where Wilson's physical style led to excessive foul trouble in international friendlies, a trend that could prove disastrous in a World Cup setting. By moving away from a post-heavy offense, the team avoids the risk of their primary scoring options being sidelined by officiating standards that do not recognize domestic seniority. The international game now rewards skill, IQ, and pace categories where the new roster core excels. The response from the remaining veterans in the league has been one of calculated retreat. Following the announcement of the 2026 roster, there was a documented surge in the deletion of old social media posts and a noticeable pivot in public rhetoric. Players who had previously been vocal in their skepticism of the rookie hype have begun to adopt more supportive stances, likely at the urging of agents and PR teams concerned about preserving international endorsements and Olympic eligibility. The realization that even a figure of Wilson's stature could be removed for being a perceived distraction has instilled a newfound sense of caution among the old guard. The private group chats and internal venting that once characterized the veteran core have largely been silenced, replaced by a strategic focus on positive messaging and brand alignment. The 2026 World Cup will serve as the official handoff from the legends of the past to the icons of the future. This full Team USA reset is not merely a change in personnel, but a declaration of independence for a sport that is no longer willing to live in the shadow of its own traditions. The committee's decision to choose the Ferrari over the tank reflects a commitment to a high-speed modern offense that the rest of the world is currently struggling to counter. While the exit of a decorated veteran like Wilson is seen by some as a criminal disregard for legacy, the organization has made it clear that the game does not stop for anyone. The throne is vacant, the gatekeepers have been unseated, and the standard for participation has been permanently recalibrated. As the team prepares for the podium in 2026, the focus remains on a unified, marketable, and tactically superior roster that is ready to lead the sport into its next chapter.